Well, it is our pleasure to welcome Tyrone Hughes to the Elite Sports Podcast. Tyrone, welcome, man. How's everything been going? I know this has been a crazy football season. Have you been catching up like normal? Have you been watching? Have you been invested? Or has this just been kind of weird with everything that's been going on?
You don't know when they're going to play nowadays. I mean, you have so many cancellations and then reschedules, and you might have a Tuesday game or a Wednesday game, and it's like, wow, okay, what's going on? But of course, I mean, I felt they shouldn't even had a season, high school, college, or NFL. But of course, and you can't say really. I think on the college level, it was probably more about the money, but they're not really making money, obviously, because you don't have the fans in the stands. But the television revenue is still there for a lot of them as well. But on the high school level, I mean, there's just so many changes. I just heard Michigan, the state of Michigan, canceled the rest of their season. Here in Louisiana, if a team gets in the playoff and somebody comes down with COVID, then they automatically forfeit. So, I mean, I think it's just too many. They were able to have a season, but it was just too off and on, too many cancellations. Some teams played 8 games. Some teams might have played 5 or 6 games. I mean, it was just crazy.
Yeah. Definitely agree there. It was, it has been, and I think Mike Leach just talked about that. We had that clip early in our podcast. Mike Leach talking about from Mississippi State, talking about how this has just been the most joyless season in a long time. But one team, it's not been completely joyless for, is the New Orleans Saints, getting set to host the Kansas City Chiefs this weekend. Man, the Saints, Drew Brees, will he be back or will he not be back? I mean, that's kind of the question right now. How do you feel like the Saints have done kind of staying the course with Taysom Hill at quarterback and kind of keeping this thing going? They lost the 1 seed after losing last week, but how do you feel about the Saints kind of going forward here with 3 games to go?
Well, I still hope that Drew doesn't play until that last game of the season. And that, I mean, they're in the playoffs. So, I mean, and I don't see, now that they've lost to Philly and lost that first seed, I don't see Green Bay losing it. But of course, again, you still got to play the game. So, but I still don't think we need Drew until we actually get into the playoffs. So I think he shouldn't come back. My belief, at least, is he shouldn't come back until possibly that last game to make sure that he's completely healed. Because I'm pretty sure, I know if I'm a player out there and I know he had rib issues or whatever, every time I go to hit him, I'm trying to hit him in those ribs just to make sure. Again, you don't never want to try to intentionally end somebody's career, but if you can put out a starting quarterback of a team, then that's a plus for your team.
Absolutely. But I mean, just the competitor and the future Hall of Famer that Drew is, how bad do you think he wants to play against a Mahomes, a young gun who's widely considered the best in the game right now? Is this maybe his one and only chance to face Patrick Mahomes?
Yeah, but I mean, again, it's still a team. Everybody always saying it's the quarterbacks going against the quarterbacks, when in actuality it's the team going against the team. Obviously, the quarterbacks get all of the criticism and all of the accolades, but it's basically still dependent upon the team, regardless of what the quarterbacks do.
Yeah, completely. When you see a guy like Patrick Mahomes play here, and we're in Kansas City, we've seen his maturation and him kind of come out of the gate there in 2018 and throwing for 5,000 yards, 50 touchdowns, winning Super Bowl MVP, and kind of seeing what he is today. As a former defensive back, when you watch this guy play, what do you see out of him? What do you see out of his game that makes him so dynamic and so dangerous?
Well, I kind of look at him like Aaron Rodgers. I mean, he has such a strong arm that he can buy time for himself, even on a blitz with his legs, whether that's backpedaling and still throwing the ball 40, 50 yards down the field, or just getting out of the pocket, using his legs and creating some time for himself to find a lot of the guys down the field. But again, as a team, they have a lot of weapons. You got a tight end in Kelsey, you got Tyreek Hill, you got 2 other receivers. I mean, offensively, I mean, you can't just cover one, you can't double one guy. You have to basically be able to play everybody. They make you play them straight up. And then you have, which has really been surprising, the running game that they have with Edwards-Helaire. He's doing a fantastic job. So, I mean, they're hitting on all cylinders. So, I mean, obviously, just as a team, as a young team, they're hard to stop right now.
Yeah, they are. But how do you think the Saints are going to go about this? I mean, they've got Cameron Jordan, Hendricks at the edge that can create pressure. And then they've got those 2 great corners on the outside, Jack Rabbit, Janoris Jenkins. Always going to take a chance here and there to make a big play, and Marcus Lattimore on the other side. How do you think they're going to attack this Chiefs offense?
I don't know, because again, where do you attack? I mean, and that's the one thing about the Chiefs is that if you apply pressure on Mahomes, that means you're putting your receivers in one-on-one situations, which I think they have some good corners to be able to do it. But who's going to cover Tyreek Hill because of all of the speed? Again, you have Patrick Mahomes who can get out of those blitz situations with his legs. And one of the problems we saw last week was them not being able to keep Jalen Hurts in the pocket, and he really killed him on in that situation where that's the type of guy, you want him to stay in the pocket and be able to just try to pick you apart as a passer. Same thing with Mahomes, keep him in the pocket, make him pick you apart as a passer, which he has been able to do. So he's not just a running quarterback. He is learning and has developed into a great quarterback with a lot of experience, with not as much experience as some of these older quarterbacks. So he still has a lot to learn.
Well, Tyrone, I got to know the story here because you're a New Orleans guy. You get drafted by the Saints in the 5th round in 1993, but before that, you go play college football at Nebraska for Tom Osborne, man. How did that happen? How did you make it to Lincoln, Nebraska?
Actually, that was kind of it was funny because obviously my final two picks came down to Nebraska and LSU, and having my mom wanted me to go because she met Tom Osborne, thought he was a great guy, what have you. My dad wanted me to go to LSU with him because of all it, me being home and then the people he worked with at the time. So it actually just came down to where I felt comfortable, and even today, I tell guys, every college can do the same thing educationally, but it's when you coming down to making a decision whether it's football, trying to pick a football school, or even when you're getting ready to pick an agent. All of the agents can basically do the same thing. Some may get you more incentives or what have you, but it basically comes down to who you feel comfortable with. Who do you feel is being honest with you? And I think that's one of the keys as being a great recruiter. And I tell people all the time, it wasn't Tom Osborne and it wasn't my receiver coach, Ron Brown, that actually got me to come to Nebraska. It was Jack Pierce, who was an excellent recruiter that they had at that time. He's no longer there. But, Jack was the guy. He can come into the hood as a white guy, and Nebraska on, sell Nebraska to you, and that was the key. And so I think, that's where a lot of these coaches these days, they got to really get out and get to these homes and get to these families and impress these parents as opposed to just looking at, stars and or stats. It's actually getting out and getting to know these families. And I think that was one of the biggest things that really impressed my mom and impressed me is that, like I said, and they brought us up to Nebraska, and that was my first time being in the snow. They brought us up for their bowl practice where they were indoors. So there's snow all on the ground or whatever. It's freezing cold, but they're practicing in this indoor facility right before one of their bowl games, right before Christmas. And, we had an excellent time, enjoyed it or what have you. So we really knew what to expect and where we were going.
That's awesome to hear. Just that you would go there at the snow, but the great recruiter that came there and talked you into being a Nebraska Cornhusker and some great years you had there. But going into your time in New Orleans, I don't know how many people know this, Tyrone, that you hold 2 NFL records, 304 kick return yards in a single game, and 347, the most combined return yards in a single game. What do those mean to you today? And it doesn't look like those are going to be beat anytime soon, with just the way the game has changed and how they're kind of getting the kickoff out of the game.
Well, and that's one of the disappointing things is just the fact that how they've taken the kickoff out of the game. The punt return is still there, but you don't see too many guys excelling at it anymore like they used to. But that was a tough game because not only was that a record-setting day for me as a return man, but it was also my first actual start as a corner in that particular game. And I had my first interception, and I ended up getting my first touchdown scored on me. So I got my cherry popped all kind of ways.
Well, it was memorable for sure. And, you talked about that. Noah kind of touched on it with his last question, but you see today where it seems like, the kick return has kind of been taken out. They, you can, in the college game, you can call fair catch, even in the field of play, get the ball at the 25. the incentive is there to just let the ball go out of the end zone, take it to the 25. But even punt returns, it seems like there's no incentive to return a punt anymore when you've got, at least 50% of plays end in a block in the back or a holding call. There's really only bad things that can happen, it seems like, on punt returns. I mean, how do you feel like the future kind of is when it comes to the return game, or are we literally moving it towards no returns at all in the game of football?
Well, I think with the good teams that you see that doesn't have that are the teams that actually put the time into it. I mean, you got to spend more than just a couple of minutes at practice on your special teams. Everybody puts a lot of emphasis, obviously, on the punt side of the ball, being in the punt coverage, because that's the thing that most likely can change the game for you. So you need to make sure you're blocking well, the punter's getting the ball off, the timing and everything, you're getting down the field covering. On the return side, though, you still have to put that same amount of time and emphasis on it. But one of the biggest keys is being able to teach these guys how to block on punt and kickoff returns, because the way, especially in the NFL, the way they're kicking the ball off now, I mean, I would have a field day returning the ball the way these guys are, as far as their alignment, them not the kickoff team not having the ability to run down or have a running start. So, I mean, I would have a field day with a lot of these returns, the way they're returning the ball now. But, like you're saying, it depends on who your returner is, what you're looking to get out of it. I mean, I think it's a lack of knowledge on a lot of these coaches' part of not knowing how to teach blocking on the punt and kickoff returns, and also timing and distance is the biggest thing as it pertains to a returner.
Absolutely, it is. You see that all the time, whether they outkick their coverage or just enough to give the guys the time to get down there. But we got to talk about your old ball coach, Jim Mora. He didn't let you play receiver on that team. I mean, and in his own words, you guys couldn't do diddly poo on offense. So, I mean, how do you feel like being allowed to play receiver could have impacted your career, or even that offense at the time, that Saints offense that could have used your speed in the slot? You already had Quinn Early and Michael Haynes out there. I feel like they could have used you.
I mean, I think I could have, and also I think that a lot of the news media felt the same way. But I mean, and what was crazy is I got drafted as a defensive back, but I had been a receiver since playground. I played defensive in Nebraska because my junior year I broke my wrist in the game against Colorado, and so I think the last game of the year they ended up cutting the cast from above my elbow to below my elbow, so I was at least able to bend my arm. So Coach Osborne put me back there against Oklahoma to do the kickoff returns, but I didn't do any punt returns because obviously if I dropped it, it was kind of hard to catch it with a cast on. But I still had the cast on, caught the ball, whatever, in the Oklahoma game. And so going into our bowl game, I'm like, look, I don't want to be sitting on no bench. So I went and talked to our defensive back coach, and at the time we were playing against, going to be playing against Miami when they had Horace Copeland, Lamar Thomas, two guys over 6 feet, 7 foot high jumpers. And then you had Kevin Williams, who was probably like one of the fastest guys in college at the time. So my thought process was, hey, look, coach, look, I'm one of the fastest guys on our team here at Nebraska. Let me come over and play on the defensive side of the ball. And it took some time or whatever, but Coach Osborne, the defensive coach, was all for it. But Coach Osborne decided to allow me to do it. And I did an okay job, against those guys or whatever. I mean, I was mostly press man against Kevin Williams because I'm like, I don't know too much. I understood coverage, obviously, as a receiver and what the responsibilities was, but my technique was not there at all. So going into my senior year in the spring, I went to Coach Osborne and asked him, hey, let me go both ways. And so he looked at me like I was crazy. And when that's going into the fall, my senior year, it became, the whole Big Eight, at the time, everybody was all about the option, us in Oklahoma, Colorado. But at that time, my senior year in 92, Kansas State, Oklahoma, everybody got away from the option and started throwing the ball. And so now it's like, well, hey, we need more cornerbacks. And so they came to me and was like, well, Ty, we need you to play on the defensive side of the ball. So there were actually 5 games that or 4 games my senior year, counting that bowl game in my junior year, but 4 games my senior year that I actually played both ways. And so going into the draft, it became a question of where do we draft? And I'm like, what do you mean, where do you draft me? I've been a receiver my entire career. I played 4 games as a defensive back, and now you don't know where to draft me? And so I ended up going to getting drafted to the Saints hometown team, which I knew they definitely needed a punt and kick returner at the time. So that was my deal with them. But they drafted me as a defensive back. So that was where I actually learned. I was actually learning where most guys came in knowing. I was still actually learning how to become a defensive back, but I had the knowledge of the game and the understanding to where I ended up by my fourth year with the Saints. I ended up playing just about every position in the secondary, from nickel, dime, corner, and safety, because I ended up playing safety in certain packages. When Carolina first came into the league, they started going with a 3 wide receiver, 2 running back set. And so in order for us to cover that third receiver, they put me in as a safety to where our corners could stay out there and cover the receivers, but we still had some run blitzes and things of that nature that we could still run. So basically, we didn't play a nickel defense. They actually put me in as a safety. I played literally strong safety, but I was actually covering the receiver. And so the media at one point was like, well, hey, look, y'all have Tyrone. He's one of the fastest guys on the team. Y'all don't have any speed over there other than, that was before Michael Haynes came, and saying, hey, look, why don't y'all try him? And then the question was, or the word was from Jim Moore, well, hey, he's not that great of a, we don't think he can catch that well. And so my thought process is, well, why am I your starting punt and kick returner? If I drop a pass, it's incomplete. If I drop a kickoff or a punt, that's a fumble.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Tyrone, I tell you, the Chiefs and Saints, let's just face it, they don't play that often, but you did get to play against the Chiefs one time in your second year in the league. The first game of the season, Joe Montana, Marcus Allen, and the Chiefs come to the Superdome there in New Orleans, and it's a Chiefs victory. But, man, I remember going into that game being so fearful of you as a returner and those linebackers, Sam Mills and Ronaldo Turnbull specifically. Man, those Saints teams were kind of scary down there, and you guys had some decent teams that were very close to the playoffs. But just wanted to see if you remembered anything about that Chiefs game with Marty and Joe Montana, Marcus Allen, and Derek Thomas coming in there to the Superdome.
No, I really don't remember the game, but I will tell you what I do remember is the practices, because we did practice against the Chiefs when we would go to Wisconsin for training camp. Remember, we were in La Crosse, and I think they were in
River Falls.
River Falls, because Chicago it was like everybody was going to Wisconsin around that time. Platteville had Chicago went to Platteville. I think you had the Vikings in a certain area or wherever as well. Mankato, I think it was. And then you had the Chiefs were up there at River Falls. So we went up there to scrimmage them several times during training camp. And one of the things was our defensive back coach, Jim Moore Jr. at the time, did not get along with the Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver coach, and I couldn't remember who it was back then. But they had big beef, and so the Chiefs, just like us at Nebraska, the receivers at Nebraska, the reason why the game went so well was because we used to cut block. Well, typically in the NFL, you don't do that, or you don't expect the receivers to do that. But at Kansas City, they did. And so every time they would come out and try to cut block us as corners, we would try to kick them, hit them, beat them, whatever. So we stayed. And again, this was us on our scout players. It wasn't the starters, because whenever you guys were on, Kansas City was on the offense, we had our scout team in there. So we would always end up getting into fights with the receivers. And so Big Jim was like, look, if y'all get into another fight, I'm kicking y'all off the field. So it was myself, another guy, J.J. McCleskey, Shane Parkour, Israel Bird, and Othello Henderson. We all came in as rookies, and we called ourselves the Posse. And so we looking at him like, what? Another fight? You going to kick us off the field? So that means we ain't got to practice? Okay. So, of course, the next guy that tried to cut somebody, we all ended up getting into a fight, and he kicked us off the field. But Jim Moore Jr. was like, hey, great job.
Well, here's another thing that people may not know, Tyrone. They should. I mean, in 2015, you get a call and you're a Saints Hall of Famer. Just what was that like, getting that call, knowing that, and just the ceremony, the celebration of you as a New Orleans Saints player, your career there, and you, like you said, that's in your hometown. That's New Orleans. You grew up there. You played pro football there, and you are a Saints Hall of Famer. What was that like for you?
One, it was totally unexpected, but then two, I cried like a baby. I'm not gonna even lie, because Ken Trahan, who's a big guy over our Saints Hall of Fame, he was the one who actually called me, and he was like, "Hey Ty, congratulations, you've been voted into the Saints Hall of Fame, well deserved, blah blah blah." So I mean, I just lit it because I'm trying to process it, and then I just tears just started coming to my eyes, like, "Are you serious?" And so. Just that the fact that it's my home and the home team was great, and I'm still trying to get Sean and Mickey Loomis, because again, I didn't really understand a lot of this stuff after I got finished playing, but I learned later that the last team that you played with is technically the last team that they have you as being retired from. So then I understood why guys would be coming back to certain teams doing these one-day contracts or what have you, to say, okay, this is the team that I want to retire from or what have you, or be listed as being retired from. So I've sent emails or what have you to Sean and Mickey to ask them to see if that could be that guy, hey, can I get that one-day contract or whatever to say, I want to be retired as a Saints player, but it hasn't happened. So hopefully one day it will, and that would make it, basically come full circle.
Yeah, I mean, we hope that for you is totally. And just one quick question here. I mean, have you ever seen any sort of human like a Willie Roaf? And just the second part of this, did you ever have any run-ins with him in practice? Was there ever a corner blitz, Willie Roaf peels off, and you're laid flat out on the ground?
I'll tell you this, Willie and I are really good friends. Whenever he comes to town, we'll talk, we'll hang out, talk to his wife every once in a while. She had called me to actually do a video for his 50th birthday to say happy birthday or what have you. We came in together. I went to the Pro Bowl my rookie year, and I think that was the only year that he did not go to the Pro Bowl, was 1993. So Willie is an amazing guy, but another guy that I played with that ended up in the Hall of Fame also, that was on that same team, was Will Shields. Played with Will at Nebraska, and but Willie was a great player. He came in, he did what he was supposed to do. He worked hard, and I mean, to say as big as he was, he had some great feet.
Yeah, absolutely, one of the best to ever do it for sure. Well, Tyrone, before we let you go, we got to hit you with our first and goal, which is going to be 4 quick questions, and you give us whatever comes to mind, and we'll try to get to the goal line here with these 4 questions, man, if you're ready.
All righty.
Okay, number 1, tough one here. We're going to start off with a little intense, but Scott Frost, is he the answer at Nebraska? Does he make it long-term there?
He's already long-term with the contract that he has, so I don't see them giving him any, because I think they went from 5 to 7, and he's there. So I think they should keep him, give him a chance, because I think if anybody knows football, they knew what he came in with. And the guys, when we went to his first spring game, we had about 300 former players that went back to the spring game just to watch that spring game and see how he coached. But I think the biggest issue were when we looked at the offensive line at the time, we're like, there's no way possible they're going to be able to compete in the Big Ten. So I think he started after that trying to recruit bigger linemen, first of all, and better players. But it's kind of like a catch-22 now in college football, because you need good players in order to win, but you have to win in order to get the good players. And so when you don't have those good players, you have to have a coaching staff who can develop those players you have and turn them into winners. And I think that's where he's kind of failing, in the sense of his coaching staff. Scott has a lot of knowledge, but I don't think the coaches on his staff has that same knowledge in order to develop kids to be these winners or these 5-star athletes.
Yeah, that's a good point. And they're going to have to do something there. We need Nebraska to be good again. That's good for college football. But our second and goal question here, favorite return guys of all time. I mean, whatever your list is, you don't have to put them in any necessary order. But, I mean, there's Deion, Darrell Green. I mean, we've had several here, Dante Hall and Tamarick Vanover, Devin Hester. There's so many.
So I would start off with Deion Sanders and Darrell Green, Mel Gray,
Yes.
the kid, what's his name? The kid from Devin Hester. Willis Brooks played at Green Bay. He's on TV now, one of the commentators.
Mm-hmm.
What's his name? The guy Brooks, last name Brooks.
Robert Brooks.
Not Robert Brooks. Robert Brooks. He was one, but not Robert Brooks. But then I'm also thinking of the other guy on College Game Day, played at Michigan.
Oh, Desmond Howard.
Desmond Howard. Yeah.
Desmond Howard. Brian Mitchell played with the Eagles and the Washington Redskins. So I mean, you had a lot of guys that were great returners that were out there back around the time that I played and even before me. So I mean, that list can go exponentially. I'd say infinity.
Dave,
absolutely. Question 3. This is a lighthearted one. Let's have some fun here. What is your favorite all-time Christmas movie?
Oh, favorite all-time Christmas movie. Oh, wow. I'm going to have to go back to probably Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and what's the other one with the two fraud, with it was Heat Miser and Coal Miser. I think that might have just been Frosty the Snowman.
Yeah, those classics, those classic claymations, Frosty and Rudolph. You can't beat those. That's amazing.
You can't beat those.
We got to punch it into the end zone here. 4th and goal question. And I'm going to go way back to your playing days. A video game came out, a Super Nintendo game. It was called Tecmo Super Bowl 3. And my question to you is, do you know how dominant you were as a return man in that game? I mean, that was really the only reason to be the Saints in that game, was because you had Tyrone Hughes returning kickoffs and punts.
Actually, no, I don't remember. The only Tecmo I remember is the original Tecmo, where you had the LT or the or Banks, who would just come down the line and tackle everybody. Somebody would always get the New York Giants on Tecmo. I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, I want to say it might have been the first Madden game, and I want to say that might have been, 95 or 96, EA Sports or somebody came, and I knew I was on as far as one of the top guys agility-wise. I had some great agility and speed on those games.
Yes, very memorable indeed. Tyrone, it has just been a true pleasure having you on, man. Thank you so much. We'll enjoy the Chiefs and Saints this weekend. Have a wonderful holiday season, my friend. Enjoy all the football we can, because hopefully next year we'll get things a little bit back to normal. We'll be able to talk about, fans and stands and more normal things next year, man. Let's try to make that happen.
And I want to give a shout out to Tyron Matthew, because he is a St. Augustine Purple Knight, which is the same high school I went to.
There we go.
He's doing an excellent job.
We love the Honey
and
Badger,
maybe we can
man.
get you back on in February,
Also,
talking a little Chiefs Saints Super Bowl.
And also I would love that. And also to my cousin Eric Bieniemy over there on the sideline too. One day he's going to get a head coaching job. And if he's listening to this, Eric, when you do get that coaching job, I just want to come on and just help out, give some information. I don't need to be a coach, but I can give some situational information that would be very helpful.
Well, I tell you, we will hate to lose Eric when he finally does get that job, but we couldn't wish it enough for him. As wonderful things that he's done, and a great person he is. We love him. I did not even realize you guys were cousins. That's amazing, man.
We actually found that out, or I actually found that out when we were in college, when he was at Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
Wow.
That's insane. He's so great, world. And I hope that he gets the right job for next year, and then maybe someday when Patrick Mahomes is in his late 20s, early 30s, he can come back to Kansas City and keep this thing going here, man. We'd love that.
That'll work. That'll be great. That'll be great.
Tyrone, thank you so much, my friend. Take her easy.
All right, thanks a lot. Thanks for having me, guys.
You bet.